All right, so Zato is pretty hard to learn, but it's very hard to master, I think. I think he's like here. He was actually harder before he had things like 5-edged sword. Um, should I do introduction? So, yeah. So today we are talking about difficulty tier list. Which character should you pick up if you're new to the game? How good are the characters, etc., etc. What's hard to master? What's hard to pick up? They're not always the same. The Strive difficulty rankings exist already, but um, currently there is a lot of characters that are not properly like represented on like the amount of stars. A big example is that Nago is like 2-star, which means he's the second highest grade in learning or like mastering, difficulty, whereas he's generally considered one of the easiest ones. Hard to learn and easy to learn should be switched. Sure. Yeah. Oh. Hello? Okay. All right, so Zato is the first character we're talking about. He's very bad. This is not a list of like, oh, if you're bad, then you're hard to learn, guaranteed, right? If you took a very easy character like say May and you made her the worst character in the game, that doesn't mean she's harder to learn. It means she's harder to win with, but not harder to learn, right? Zato is pretty hard. He has a lot of negative edge stuff. In this game, he doesn't have that much Eddie footsies anymore because they reduced that so much. You're not all like holding like 4 different buttons the entire time in neutral. And there's ways to cheat some of the hold like negative edge inputs by like pressing them during backdashes, during a dust move, during FD. So he's hard to learn, but not quite at the top. I think he's about here. He's also not as hard to master as you could assume because his playstyle is pretty one-dimensional currently. If a different patch, he might be in a different placement, but yeah, he doesn't have like crazy hard combos as well that people like. There's some research management, but the combos are not that hard. It's mostly about his real difficulty is that he plays a lot of matches very differently. Not as much anymore because he's just pigeonholed into one strategy. But when he works properly, when he's not bottom tier, you interact with a lot of different moves in a lot of different ways because of Eddie and like all your different moves like Drunkard, Oppose, drills. And that's where his difficulty comes from. But I would put him here in this patch because he actually does not require that much maintenance currently. Next up, we have Soul. I think a lot of people would expect me to put him here. I think Soul is actually significantly harder than you might think. He's pretty easy to learn. So he's probably going to be about here. He's not like a character that you cannot play the game for a long time just because you pick him up. But if you do want to do like car DP, if you do want to do like all of his different Oki setups, you're gonna have to learn a decent amount because he does actually have a lot of different knockdowns, which is like the hardest thing about him. I think he doesn't really get like the same Oki from everything like say Kai does. So I think he's significantly harder to learn than you might think compared to a normal Shoto. However, I will say I think the hardest thing with Soul is mastering him because although he doesn't have crazy hard shit, he does have some harder setups. His optimal routing is actually really hard to master, like the optimal combos. You always find new Soul combos whenever you boot this character up. It's like an infinite amount of combos. But what I will say is that the thing with Soul that makes him a little harder is that he has a lot of good moves now. Soul on launch was basically just far slash DP and success, Whereas now he's like, his strength is very evenly spread for a top tier character. So you actually have to play him in a bunch of different ways in a bunch of different matchups, which makes him much harder than a character like Kai or Sin. So I'll put him about here. Still on the harder end for sure. Like probably like top 6, 7 hardest characters. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people call Soul brain dead because he's broken. That's the thing. People used to call Happy Chaos brain dead, but Happy Chaos was never brain dead outside of like the first patch. Really, he always took a lot of skill. He just was very broken. Like he was a top 1 contender. Kai is very easy to learn, but I do think he is harder to master than you might think, just because he also plays neutral in a few different ways. And he does have some harder Oki setups. You do have to manage like optimizing Dragon install. You don't really need this shit, but you can. Kai players are very lazy overall, I would say. Like they do the bare minimum. And it does work, but I don't think, since no Kai players winning Evo yet, I do feel like we can honestly say that he's like not super easy, right? So I'd probably put him here, like in the middle. He also does play like normal gameplay, right? Like when you like they nerfed Stun Dip a bunch, doing random food rock is not that strong. So like you're not skipping neutral with Kai that much. Like if you do, you have 50 meter. You're not, spitting. You're not doing dolphin. You're not doing wild assault. It's actually like you're actually playing normal neutral, which does actually require some skill and does take time to master. Street Fighter is hard, even though there's no like crazy combos and stuff like that. Next we have May. May has some mastery stuff, but she's very easy to learn, right? I would put her like here. Wait, she does have charge though. So I guess okay, I'll put her like here. So like she's not the bottom of easy to learn, but she is like her mastery bar is pretty low. Right? She's not here because she requires charge. She does skim neutral an insane amount. In 2.5, she was probably down here just because she only spammed Dolphin. She's very easy, very strong, arguably the best. Honestly, I'm gonna move Kyle a little bit. I feel like I feel bad putting him that far, that close to the hard characters. Axel is easy to learn. I think Axel is about the same as Kai, honestly. He's just a bit more weird. So I'm going to put him like in the middle here. But I feel like Axel's mastery is arguably lower than Kai. Chipp is easy to learn, but he's very punishing. And I think that's a very big thing. I was actually talking with Pep about this. So Peppery Splash, very, very good Guilty Gear player through all games, like Accent Core or Plus R rather, and then Xrd. And something he brought up was that it's pretty funny that no matter how hard the execution is, even if your character has crazy hard combos, the amount of drops and mistakes is actually not that different. And part of it is just because like in harder games, the good players like raise their level, right? But I think it's also because that the hardest thing for a lot of humans is like a lot of different situations and managing them all. And like what the punishment is when you fuck up is actually more relevant in many times, like in a lot of times, than purely how hard is this maneuver to do once. Obviously, if something is like borderline inhuman to do, then it matters a fuck ton. But I do think Chipp is like very easy game plan, but his mastery becomes basically from the fact that he's just very fast, and if you do fuck up, you do actually lose the entire round. And playing consistently with Chipp is hard, like much harder than you'd expect, because the game is so volatile. Pot is harder to learn, but he's very easy to master. I'll put him like here. Like, outside of some combos, he doesn't really have anything. He doesn't play traditional neutral at all. He basically uses special moves and wall assault for 95% of the neutral and then presses far slash a little bit. Yeah, like some of his Kara stuff is not like super easy for a beginner, but like, wait, I should put him down. He's not, he's about soul, I think. But like when you look at an average pop match, do they do the fucking one frame Kara back Mega Fist? No, they match back throw on Mega Fist on Wake Up, right? And then they do Garuda on Wake Up, which is like the easiest Oki in the entire game to run. I think Faust is actually like very hard to master. I don't think he peaks as high because he doesn't have as hard execution as Zato, but I do think he's very hard and like you have to adapt to the RNG. He's made a little bit easier by the fact that J2K is very strong now and like Teleporter C is also pretty brain dead neutral skip. But in general, he plays in pretty diverse ways. He adapts a lot to items. There's a ton of mastery you can do with him, but he is still like throwing items and pressing your big normals does work for a very long time, right? So that's why I think he's like easier to learn. He's probably closer to here though, like next to Soul. Like I think he's hard to pick up than many others. Like if you, I mean these characters are probably higher up because like Axel's definitely way easier to pick up than Faust. Millia is, I think she's about here as well. I'm not sure how hard she is to master. That's what I'm struggling with. I think she's slightly easier to master than Faust, right? But I do think she's very punishing for the same reason. Wait, so she's harder to learn but easier to master. Yeah, so something like this. I'm just gonna separate them a little bit so it's easier to see. Ram is easy to learn, easy to master. She's not quite as easy as May because she doesn't neutral skip as much. She uses big normals, but she's very easy, very easy. Leo is, he has a little bit of the soul thing of like, he has a lot of different moves. He doesn't have a bad move. And so he requires a little bit more skill than some other characters that are like Axel, who are just more pigeonholed. But his like basic shit is very easy. He's charged, so he's not like at the bottom because he's charged. But his charge is easier than May's. But he does rely on whiff punishing more. Back when he had the 2D that was safe on block, he was definitely one of the easiest characters ever. He does also benefit a lot from like learning IBs and learning the opponent's block strengths because he dash blocks a lot. But I'd still put him easy. Let me see. He's harder to master than he is to learn. Is he easier than Kai? I don't know. Let's just put him here. Like, I don't know. They're about the same. Might be a little bit harder than Kai. I'll put him one step. Because he does have two stances, I guess. And, like, you do use the two stances more. He does have... Yeah, he has less auto time shit as well than Kai. Nago is harder to learn because you have to learn blood management. And you do, if you fuck up with the blood management, you can lose a round because of it. But the mastery is very easy. So he's like here, I would say. You also just play the game in a different way. That's why he's a bit harder to learn. Geo, same thing with Leia, where she requires some whiff punishment. And she requires a decent amount of combos, but she's very easy as well. Anji is bottom left. I think Anji is easily the easiest character in the game, and I don't think it's close. You have nothing hard. Like the combos, you can optimize them slightly more if you like, so that you will make one hit later. That's not fucking difficulty, right? Like it's not like he loses the game if he wallbacks wrong, like say Abba or Asuka or Happy Chaos, right? He's still fine. He just does a little bit less damage. He never ever plays neutral normally. Like basically with Anji, you can basically learn an entire matchup by learning how do they interact with spin, and that's it. Right? Like you have to learn so little about the game to play good Anji. And even though, like, you could argue that some characters have less sauce, like let's say Sin. At least Sin still plays the game. You know, like he's a very easy barrier, but Sin and Kai, characters like this, like they still play the game. Anji is very much like a Mei without charge and without manually timed setups for the most part. Ino is... I'll put Ino about here. She's about as hard to master as Axel. I'll probably put her here just because like she has a bit more manually timed shit than Leo. Leo is easier. But she's easier to pick up. So she's probably around here. Like she's less weird than Nago. I do think that people think she is easier than you think just because the Western Inos are all glue eaters. Goldlewis is a little bit harder to learn, right? Like you do have to learn the behemoths, but he is absurdly easy to execute with, right? So he's about here. Like he's very easy. He's the same thing as Anji, where like you only play like JD versus Wild Assault in like 95% of matchups. And like, you know, you run in on the ground like a little bit of the time. But like you're really using like you're playing rock paper scissors and you can use rock 80% of the time. Jacko, a lot of people like have different opinions on Jacko than me. I actually think Jacko's harder than people think. It's just that a lot of Western Jackos do like 0 setups and basically mash 2D and 2K only. I actually think that if you want to optimize her, which I only think like some Japanese Jackos have started to come close to, and even then I don't really think there's a top like tournament threat level winning Jacko yet. At least not previously. So I do think in order to master her, she's actually quite hard, but they don't make it seem like it, you know. She's a bit easier to learn than I would say like Soul, but I do think she's harder to master. Happy Chaos. Obviously super easy. Right? Super easy. I mean, that's what Reddit wants me to say. This is what Reddit wants me to say. They think that, oh well, since I main Happy Chaos, I have to put him here. Otherwise, it's just bias. All right, moving on. Baiken is... She's a little bit harder than you might think because she has a lot of manually timed setups. And she's pretty reliant on that, but she's very high health and she doesn't press that many different buttons in neutral. So I think she's easier to learn, but she's about here. She might be a little bit harder than Leo. Let's put her here. I think she's harder than Ino because she has a few more manually timed shit. I don't know. No, I'll put it here. Testament is very easy. She's about Ram, like a Ram, but slower in many ways, but has a few more setups. I put her around Geo. Bridget is probably underrated in how hard she is, but she does have a lot of really easy auto time shit that you do 80% of the time, but the remaining 20 is actually quite hard, and her combo routing is also pretty hard. So I'd probably put her about Jacko. She's also very fragile in the same way Chipp is. Sin. I think Sin is unironically like only a little bit easier than Leo. I think people overrate how easy Sin is because he's an absurdly easy to learn character. Like I would put him here in terms of like he's super easy to learn compared to like any other character, but I do think that his resource management and stuff like that, like optimizing combos, hitting the 2-frame Tyrant Battle every time or whatever the fuck the timing is, and some of his manually timed mix is actually quite hard. I could be wrong about this though, but like there's no Sin that really plays him optimally yet that has played him a lot. But I do think he's like very is he easier than Kai? I guess he plays matches more similar than Kai, so I'll put him like here. Bedman, Bedman's pretty hard to learn. I'll probably put Bedman like pretty easy to master. Relatively. Yeah, the playstyle's very easy, but like he's harder to learn. I put him here. Asuka. Asuka is actually, in terms of how hard to learn, I think Asuka is easily top. Asuka to learn Asuka properly is probably the hardest fighting game character that's ever been made. I unironically think this. To like learn him is one of the hardest fighting game characters ever. To master, not necessarily as hard though, because a lot of his game plan really does boil down to hard force test case 3 and then do it. And he doesn't have that much execution that like, if you drop this one combo that is like a 1-frame link, then you fucking explode, right? But if you do fuck up resource management, I think it's a really big deal. So it's really about experience for Asuka. And then once you've learned it, it does become a little bit easier. He's still hard. He still has a lot of freedom. Managing all the different RNG situations in the same way Faust is legitimately very high skill cap, right? Like picking up all the different shit. Like, oh shit, I had this combination. I have this many cards. Like making optimal decisions is harder, but to me, he has too high health and he's a little bit too forgiving in that sense for him to be truly maxed out and hard to master. Johnny is a little bit harder to learn, but he's pretty easy to master. I'll probably put him about here. Elphelt is very easy to learn, very easy to master. Abba, ooh, I don't know about Abba. I think Abba is in the same way as Chipp, where like she's very punishing if you fuck up. I'd probably put her about here. Where would I put her? Yeah, I think she might be around Faust level. In the same way where like she's like Faust, but like in a very different way. Faust is probably a little bit harder, so let me put her here. Where like it's all about like not fucking up your routing and like I think to all your wall breaks and like if you drop one combo with Abba, it's like dropping 4 combos with any other character, basically. Because you might just run a jealousy gauge, you might not enter. I think she has a higher skill cap than you might think. She also does play matchups differently. So that's another thing. where like she has the kind of Zato thing where like playing matchups differently is very, very important, right? All right, should we actually talk about Happy Chaos? Should we actually? What does the chat think? What does the chat think? What do you think chat should be? I won't say anything. We should put him like here. Bottom corner is too easy. Is above soul past Faust? So you mean here? Like there? He's not here. He's not here. I think Asuka's harder. They're harder in different ways, but I do think Asuka's overall a little bit harder. I'll probably put him here. A lot of the things that... There's an argument that he's here, honestly. It depends on what you count. So the reason why Happy Chaos has an argument for here is that he actually has legitimately like 15, 16, 17 relevant one frame timings. People used to say that Street Fighter 4 was hard, or no, people didn't used to. People say now that Street Fighter 4 was hard because there was one frame links. Almost all one frame links, except a very few select ones, were either one, irrelevant, or two, plinkable. So they weren't one frame links, they were two frame links. Happy Chaos has a shit ton of actual legitimate one frame links that would help his resource game and stuff like that. These include, and like they're not irrelevant things either. It's like shot, Kara roll into shot when you cross up. One frame early, and it's either true block string or the shot does not come out. The perfect timing, it beats throw, and it crosses up. One frame late, it loses the throw, right? There's a massive swing. It's not one of those things that you just go for, and if it doesn't work, then it's fine. Far slash into roll into shot, right? To link on a standing opponent to do far slash roll shot and then not spend another bullet. It's a one frame timing. 6P is another for the same thing. 6P roll shot, one frame timing. Different one frame timings because the moves are not the same. 2S, same thing. I think 6K is the same, but I'm not 100% sure. 6K might be easier, but it's at the very least a different timing. Doing one frame roll, like the cross-up roll timing, is not the same either if you do it from close slash Kara roll, if you do shot, roll, shot, there's also one frame timing, or if you do 6S roll shot, right? They're all different. He also does have a bunch of like his main route that people want to do, like the clean hit route. On standing, it's technically a double, like it's a really weird execution where if you have like 2 frame of leniency over 2 inputs, but the input it's like a 1.5 frame link essentially, or like a 1 frame. It depends on your execution, but no one can hit them consistently, like the clean hit shots. Any Chaos player that has said that they can hit them consistently cannot. I have looked. Yeah. The thing with Chaos is that because of how his bullets work, where you manually release the timing, they are never buffered, and that's why he has 1 frame timings. He also has another 1 frame timing I can show you guys that Jack found recently. Doesn't he also have RNG? Yeah, so Chaos does have RNG, which has a little bit of the Faust thing where like reacting quickly to RNG does matter. Picking up from RNG does matter, but he's way less RNG reliant. But yeah, game plan wise, that was the thing with Chaos, was that before Chaos was very, very strong, so you didn't have to master him necessarily to do well. And then he could lean on the easier parts of his game plan, which was like zoning. Well, now that they killed zoning, and he's like way more whiff punch reliant, and his resources are fucked, all these 1 frame links are actually way more important now. Before you could outspace roll from throw, you can no longer do this, so the 1 frame link is like infinitely more relevant. He has a lot of like a shit ton of manually timed mix. In general, OSing things is just very hard because you have to have the gun out. He has negative edging like Zato. I do think overall he's significantly harder than Zato right now. But that might change if Zato becomes top tier, because then Zato might be more about like different eddy management, stuff like that. The good thing before was that Habikas could play almost every matchup. Not in the similar way, but like he had a baseline. Some parts of the matchup was always the same. And then like it was like about how good the answers were, basically. Right, so this is a 1 frame timing. Yeah, so the shot doesn't come out. And if the shot doesn't come out, you're minus 19, you die. Right? This 2 frame gap here, there I could have been thrown. Or he just doesn't combo. Could be DP'd. Here, same, also another 1 frame timing. I think this one, because it's... Wait, minus 19. No, it's also 1 frame timing, yeah. Yeah, so hitting these is actually 1 frame timing. I didn't think it first either. It's not like there are 1 frame timings that are harder, but there's also a lot of 1 frame timings that are easier. Multi-shining in melee, for example, is easier than this. And the reason why is because multi-shining with melee, you kind of drag your hand like this. And like, you're only really waiting like 3 frames before you press the B button. So it's kind of like a bum or a slide. Whereas this, it's like roll, release, shot, right? So it's like, it's all about timing, which makes it very hard. Because let's say someone backdashes, right? Then this might be different timing, because the roll starts later due to the attack hitting later. So it's actually a really, really, really hard 1 frame link that you cannot be fully consistent on as long as you're human, basically. And double tapping it is hard because it's a negative edge input. So you can't even do that. Kara roll is another hard one because you have to close slash, quarter circle back, right? And then you have to dash so that you roll. And then you have to pull out the gun and then let go of the gun. And if you do close slash and then quarter circle back, and then you don't let go of quarter circle back before you press dash, then you get nothing. You just get roll. Right. How much does his role matter? It matters a lot. It's not necessary to play the character, but it is necessary to master him, right? Has anyone mastered him? No. Has anyone mastered any strike character? Also no. So like, see here. When I get counter hit, that's the 1 frame line. I have practiced this a lot. You see that sometimes it just true block shrinks. That's also not good. So for the same reason, for the same reason is hitting the 1 frame timing on frame traps is ultra relevant with Chaos because if you do close slash right, they're gonna mash throw all the time, and so hitting the 1 frame timing with 6K like this is a really big deal. So this is also something I practice a lot with, right? And you lose the game a lot of time because Chaos defense is very bad if you fuck this up. This 1 frame timing was also changed between patches because they slowed down 6K. It's also a different one if you do with this with 2D. So yeah, he in general he just has a lot of hard things, but his game plan is not the hardest, arguably. I think it's a lot harder now though, but yeah. Oh yeah, 2K delay 2D is another 1 frame timing. Getting this to counter it is 1 frame. It's really funny that everyone talks about Stride being so easy, and everyone hates on Happy Chaos, saying he's brain dead, when by all accounts, out of the regular fighting game characters I've ever played, he's easily the hardest one. Like, I played Asuka a little bit, but I haven't competed with him, so I was going to say. But Asuka, Zato, and Happy Chaos are all very clearly much harder than any other fighting game character I've ever played. Even like Marvel 3, like old Guilty Gear stuff I've tried. Specifically to master, though. And I think that's an interesting distinction, right? To learn Happy Chaos, Zato, and all these characters are actually much easier than a lot of previous versions. I have not played previous version public characters, so I do not know if Zato in the previous game is harder. I guess they're both bottom tier, so it doesn't fucking matter. Sag. Yeah, so there's actually a lot of, like, learning the 1 frame timing here. It's not just Chaos either, right? Learning this with Soul is another thing that's very important.